Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Connections with Cass podcast. My name is Cass, and I am your host. I am a psychic medium and spiritual coach here to help bridge the gap between the spirit world and the physical world. In this podcast, we talk about all things spiritual, all things healing, and mediumship. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to come into your soul's purpose, how to step into your power, and how to step into your light. This is a follow-up to the previous episode where we talked about the energetic and spiritual components of narcissists and empaths. But even if you haven't had an experience as an empath or a narcissist, or you haven't had an experience with an empath or a narcissist, which I would find hard to believe in this lifetime, but if you haven't, this episode will still be beneficial for you to listen to, as we are going to talk about some of the tools that I used myself to heal and to come into my awareness of my light and my power. And let me tell you, it is not easy. That is the first thing I want to say. And the second thing I want to say is that please use your discernment in trying the different modalities that there are available to heal. So there are so many different types of therapies. There are so many different tools online. There are so many different people that you can listen to. And I'm just one of those people. And if it resonates with you and you feel called to try some of the techniques that I used personally to help myself heal, I encourage you to, and I hope that this helps you. If you are in some really hard and deep, really mental health scenarios, and you feel called to seek medical attention, I greatly encourage you to do so. I never want anyone to think that I am here saying that this is the only way to do something. I actually feel really strongly that we are all here to experience different ways to heal, and we are all here to experience different ways of life, and that's what makes us grow and evolve. And so just use your discernment, and if it resonates, I'd love for this to help just one person out there. And if it doesn't, you don't have to take the advice either. So as we start to talk about this, I want to bring it back to childhood like we always do. If you've heard me talk on any of these topics before, you know that this conditioning process of how we take in energy and experience human life is really shifted from the moment that we're born. So our soul comes down into our human bodies in an energetic frequency. And our energetic frequency is unique to us, but at its core is unconditional love and light. And that goes for all souls that are here on this earth. I do believe, it is my belief, that every soul that is on this earth was created in divine essence and is the frequency of unconditional love and light. When we come down into this dense human experience on earth, not only do our bodies keep us dense, but our free will and our ego and all of the human things that happen to us here keep us in a very dense frequency that pushes us to operate out of our mind, which is part of the human, rather than our heart space or our soul, which is the energetic component of us that we inherently are at our core. And so from the second that we're born, we are not only taught that energy isn't real. You can see this when you see kids that are told their imaginary friends aren't real, or that their nightmares aren't that scary, and that the person that they see out of the corner of their eye wasn't actually there. And they're so silly for making up this story about their past life, when in reality, they're experiencing the truth. And when we tell a child to not listen to their truth, they are going to start operating in a way that is disconnected from who they really are. And so in that sense, we all, and most of us anyways, unless you had very progressive parents that were encouraging you to talk to your imaginary friends and talk about your past lives, etc., we start to operate from the mind, from the rational way of thinking, like, oh, like my parent is right. There's no way that there was a person over in the corner of the room, or there's no way that I had a life in another country where I had different parents. Like that doesn't make any sense. So we start to work from the mind really early in life and just are taken out of our imagination brain. In addition to that, we're also conditioned to not believe in ourselves, and not even not believe in the truth of our energetic soul, but we're taught not to believe in ourselves, in our capabilities and our worth. And we start to experience different conditioning processes that leave negative energetic imprints within our energetic soul that we don't consciously recognize. And those can be significant traumas and wounds that happen to us as children and when we're growing up, but they can also just be like repetitive praise, that the parent thought that they were doing something good by constantly praising their child, but in reality, it was conditioning them to have to be perfect at something or whatever it may be. So we're just constantly conditioning our kids in the society to think in the mind and be very disconnected from what they feel like is right in the human experience. So how do we fill those wounds, and how do we walk around as a clear representation of our true soul? It is very difficult. And the bottom line is we need to go back into how this all started and who we really are. And the way to get back to who we really are and where this started is to go back to your childhood. And this is called inner child healing. And in my healing process, I utilized inner child healing with shadow work, as well as balancing my energy and kind of understanding the chakra system in order to fill my holes and come into knowing who I really was. A couple years ago, if you had asked me who I really was and what I like to do, why I was here, I would have absolutely no answer. I remember, I don't know if I told the story in the last episode, but I remember making like a dating app, and it asks you questions about like what you like to do for fun, who you are, what's your personality. And outwardly, I was pretty like successful in my occupation, and that was really my identity for most of my 20s. And I just could not answer the questions. What did I like to do for fun? What did I think of myself? And I'm just sitting there, and I was like, I like to spend time with family. I mean, it was true, but now I would have like a long list of who I am and what I like to do and what makes me happy in this life. And so if you're at a place where you just don't know that that's okay. And that was part of your process. And it's part of your process to learn who you are again. And we are designed to go through this process in order to learn, grow, and evolve. So with my inner child healing and my shadow work and learning about the chakras, I was in a pretty tough place when I started the deep healing work that I was doing. And I was very, very disconnected from even who I had been for most of my life. So for most of my life, I was a certain person, like in my adult life for most of my 20s. And then basically the negative parts of me kind of were amplified by the relationship that I was in. And then it finally broke me. My nervous system was a complete disaster. I truly couldn't even think of anything about who I was or what I really felt about life. And it was interesting because I had always kind of felt like that under the surface, but I could always put on a front, or I could always find a piece of me before that. But this brought me back to like ground zero. And so a couple of you actually have reached out to me about my last episode and said, I'm so sorry you went through that. And, I wish you had somebody to talk to during that time and those kinds of things. Guys, I want to be very clear that prior to that experience of the last relationship that did break me, I was much more of the narcissist in my other long-term relationship. And I embodied qualities that hurt people. And while I was very broken and very hurt from this last experience, and I appreciate the comments, I want you all to know that on this side of it, I would not wish for one thing to be different through that experience. Not one single ounce of my pain, not one single thing that happened. I am so grateful for everything that tore me down because it showed me what needed to be healed within me. And for anyone that is listening that is in a hard time, please know that if you do the work, if you consciously choose to change your narrative and find yourself, you can get to this place too. And I really hope that this inspires others to really go deep into their pain and find out why. Why did you even attract this type of relationship in the first place? I do not feel that anything in this lifetime is a coincidence. And when we think about the people that we attract, if we heal from the wounds, we just aren't an energetic match for someone of that vibration anymore. For someone that has wounds and you don't have wounds anymore, it's just not going to work. So how do we get started with this work? Getting a shadow work journal is what I always recommend first. The shadow work journal is going to prompt you with different questions and bring you back to different experiences in your childhood that allow you to feel what you felt during the first times that you experienced the trauma that still holds a place in your energetic being later in life. And oftentimes bringing that to our awareness will show us that maybe the situation that's happening right now isn't even really that triggering. It's that it reminds you of the past. And so bringing that to conscious reality and bringing that into awareness allows us to disconnect from it because it no longer has a place in our life. And so there are different tools within the shadow work journal that also will help you kind of release this, meditations and hugging your inner child and saying it's okay. And our inner child really does live within us. And if you do a meditation to connect with that inner child and you go back to when you're 8 years old and something traumatic happened, chances are you're going to be overwhelmed with pain. You're going to be overwhelmed with anxiety and fear, and feel why that child started to develop a different conditioning process that tried to protect them from ever experiencing that feeling again. But to go back into our subconscious or into our soul and tell that child that they are safe and that things are much different now, and to heal from that and to come into acceptance that we can't go into the past and change anything that happened, but we can come into the present and understand that what happened in the past is in the past and we've learned and grown from it, and that's where it should stay, is something that we can do to help us move forward. So in addition to the inner child healing, shadow work, it's the shadow work journal, but it does a lot with the inner child. But the shadow work in general encompasses really anything that has been traumatic in our lives. So once we move past the inner child, we can even get into the adult experiences that have affected us, that are still with us, that we need to let go of as well. And so in both of these things, I think the overarching theme is to recognize that what is in the past is in the past. We cannot change the past. There is nothing that we can do to go back and change the past. And we have to come into some sort of acceptance that what happened was for a reason. And I know that is very, very difficult, especially when we talk about trauma. But from my perception of doing the work I do spiritually now, as far as being a psychic medium, as well as my own healing journey, it truly has transformed the way that I experience human life. And to hear stories from the other side of our past loved ones who recognize that the trauma that they either instilled on others or went through themselves actually did help their soul evolve and grow, really kind of just supports how I feel in my own healing journey of that acceptance as well, and kind of brings me into a place where I want to share that with you all. Before doing the spiritual side of this and just doing the healing work, I would have had a very hard time saying that, because how can we justify all of the terrible things that are happening to kids, especially in this world? Innocent children are experiencing horrible things all of the time. And that's something that's probably the hardest thing to wrap our heads around when we think about God and when we think about a higher power. Like, why does that exist in this lifetime? And this is my personal take on it. I truly believe that we experience darkness on this planet to evolve and grow, and our souls chose to come here, not necessarily to experience exact circumstances or exact things that we do in our physical realities, but our souls came here to learn certain lessons, and through our free will and our ego and our parents' free will and ego, which we were aware of before we came here, we are experiencing certain things in order to learn and grow and evolve. And when we decide to not let those things in our lives run our lives, and we recognize that the past is in the past, and we as adults do have control over the future now, and we can heal. And that is one of the most incredible parts about being human, is that we have the power to heal. We have the power to transmute this darkness into light. That's when we can really step into our true soul's vibration that allows us to live the lightest and most authentically aligned life possible. And this is really, I always say that this is really difficult as a human being to say, but again, as I work with entities of light or beings of light that communicate this same kind of theme to me, I just feel the need to share it with you all. And it really did transform the way I looked at my own healing process too. And even if we just take the last relationship that I was in and how broken I was after it, I held on to so much guilt of myself for staying in that relationship and letting myself get to that point. And I held on to so much anger towards the other person. And I held on to a lot of fear and just all the negative things that can come out of being broken inside. And recognizing that when those emotions would come up after I had left the relationship, it is a product of the past. And I think that is what truly shifted my healing process. So I was doing the inner child work and I was doing the shadow work. I was healing the little girl that developed these kinds of holes in her energetic system in order to attract this type of relationship in the first place, or be a not so great person in, before that relationship. So I was healing her. I was recognizing that these patterns of thought and patterns of behavior, patterns of reaction that I was having to stimuli outside of myself, and the emotions, the fear, the anxiety, the shaking, the trembling, the not sleeping, all of those things were a product of the past, and that all we have is the present. I really started to be able to shift my soul and my body into the present moment and start to shift out of the past. And I did that by sitting with the uncomfortable emotions. I think in this society, we are taught that when we have an uncomfortable emotion, that it's not good and that it's not right. And I think that's why a lot of times medications are wildly overprescribed. And I'm not saying that everybody that's on medication is overprescribed by any means, but the use of different mental health medications in this society, in American society, is rampant. And it just pulls people further away from their soul if they're not needed. And it pulls people away from healing. And if you're numb to the pain, then you're not going to heal from the pain. And again, I'm not saying that anyone that's listening to this should stop their medication by any means. There is a purpose, and to get to a baseline of being able to work on yourself is extremely important. And especially if your medications are helping you to do the healing work, they are very valuable. But just in a general sense, I think there's a lack of focus on actually doing the work to heal, and more of a focus on you shouldn't feel a bad feeling. Here's something to help you with that. And let's just use anxiety, for example. If I was feeling anxious, I went back to my childhood and to see where that anxiety would have started. And honestly, anxiety wasn't the number one thing that I would have experienced throughout most of my life. It was more like disassociation or avoidance of stimuli. Whereas in my later years after the narcissistic relationship, I was very, very anxious. And so that wasn't necessarily so much from my childhood, but in my shadow work, I went back to where that started. And that was really me feeling unsafe. And there were times in my childhood where I could attribute that same unsafe feeling. I just processed the energy in a different way. But I had learned how to, in my late 20s, process this energy in a way that was manifesting as anxiety. And so the way that I think about this is that I'm getting stimuli that's coming in, maybe a video that I watched that it reminds me of something that happened, or even I hear somebody yelling and it triggers me. And that yelling is an energetic vibration that's coming through my energetic being. That yelling is not necessarily the emotion itself, right? Like I am processing that emotion. And so it comes through my energetic being, through my chakras. And for me, it was like at the pit of my stomach first. And so let's just say it goes through my sacral chakra where we process emotions. I mean, it's going through more than that, but just for the sake of this example, just imagine this energy flowing through your sacral chakra. And that sacral chakra, if it does have wounds that are from the childhood that are not even related to this particular yelling anxiety kind of feeling, which there were, but regardless, if there's any sort of wounds that are representative of how we process emotion, then this yelling is coming in and getting triggered from those past experiences, from those wounds. And then that emotion is being processed as anxiety and we get overwhelming anxious. Then it attaches to your nervous system, and that's where you feel your body maybe start to shake or just get very tense. And then our minds react. And our minds react by starting to spiral or defaulting to the narrative that we've grown accustomed to telling ourselves either what's wrong with us, what could go wrong, maybe even how to handle it, but it's not a healthy way, and why it's happening. And so we have to cut off the emotion from the start. So the step number one for me when I was experiencing something like anxiety, and at the time that I was going through my deep healing process, something like anxiety would just come over me, sometimes without recognizable external stimuli. But let's just say I hear someone yelling and I get anxious and I'm triggered, and all of the things start to happen. And it feels like they're all happening at once, but I do feel like it's like a step-by-step process, or at least I conceptualize it that way in order to kind of go through those steps myself. So I start with imagining this energy entering my sacral chakra and going into my emotional center. And I say to myself, is this feeling of anxiety serving my highest good at this time? No. Is this feeling of anxiety something to do with my past? Yes. What part of my past? And I bring myself to several examples from my childhood, from the relationship, whatever it may be. Is that happening in the present moment? No. What feelings, other words can I attribute to that feeling of anxiety? Let's just say it's, I feel unsafe, I feel threatened, and I feel scared. Reminding myself, are you safe in this moment? Are you scared in this moment? And truly, if I was just sitting at my house or, in a restaurant and I heard yelling, I am safe and I'm not scared necessarily. My body and my energy is reacting and feeling scared, but is my soul, let's just think of the soul as a separate entity, is my soul scared? No, I know I'm safe. I'm eating at a restaurant and everything's fine. And just bringing awareness to the different aspects of us that are reacting in different ways to this experience. So, and then I would just bring light, and I always just imagine a waterfall of white light coming into like my sacral chakra and just balancing it. And then I go through the chakra step that you guys might have heard in a previous episode, where I start at the root chakra and I just balance my chakras. And the chakras are the energetic communication centers where this information is being filtered through. And once we can learn how to balance them and ground them into this lifetime and recognize that they are kind of reacting in ways that aren't representative of our true soul's intentions, we can start to really come into our power and come into our light. We can start to relax into knowing that our chakra system can be a little bit, let's say, manipulated by our thoughts in a good way, right? So we can shift the chakra system being manipulated by the negative energy into our positive thoughts and our positive energy. And so I start at my root chakra. In this moment, I'm sitting in the restaurant, I hear the yelling, I feel my body triggered, I feel the mental narrative spinning that you're unsafe and how dare you stay in this relationship for so long, look at how much it messed you up, blah, 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 blah. And the feeling of anxiety in my chest now that's grown from my stomach to my chest, and all the things are happening, right? And I stop and I say, okay, the root chakra, that's actually safety. So it's really important in this situation. But I imagine a red ball of light outside my root chakra and I say, okay, do I have food? Do I have water? Do I have shelter? Do I have money? Am I safe right now? Am I physically safe right now? Yes. And then I think about the aspects of my inner child that are scared right now, and I soothe that inner child, and I imagine this red ball of light operating, like moving in a really beautiful, healthy way. Okay, next is my sacral chakra, and it's an orange chakra right below your belly button. And so I imagine this beautiful orange ball of light, and that's our emotional center that we've already kind of addressed, but just reiterate it. The more times we tell ourselves to focus on our light or focus on our ability to heal, the more times that we will default to that instead of defaulting to the negative. So continue to just repeat things to yourself, even if you think it's silly. So the sacral chakra is absolutely out of control in this situation, and it's processing an emotion that is from the past, and it's just not serving us at all. So I would say to myself, okay, I am experiencing an emotion that is reflective of a past trauma. I understand and feel the emotion inside of me. It's okay to feel this emotion inside of me. And that's where I kind of got off on a tangent, but it's okay to feel uncomfortable, especially when you're working on this stuff. We're not going to feel awesome every single day, every moment, but it's not a bad thing to feel uncomfortable. And I think we're so scared to feel uncomfortable, and we're so scared to feel pain, and we're taught that that's not the right thing to feel in this lifetime. And we really have to adjust that and become comfortable and learn from the pain. So I'm feeling anxiety right now. I recognize that it's completely not relevant to my experience that I'm having in this moment. And it is a product of my past. And I balance this energy and I disconnect from my nervous system and I disconnect from the narrative that's starting to play in my mind. I recognize that's not really me. And then move up to the sacral chakra, and that is your will center, your desire to make choices or your ability to make choices that are in your highest good. When the solar plexus is out of whack, you either don't feel in your power to make choices of your highest good, or you're in your ego and you're making choices out of the need for power. So when it's in balance, you're making choices that are right for your soul and right for the universe, right for everyone around you and whatever is within you. So with the solar plexus, I imagine a beautiful yellow ball of light moving beautifully. And I say, I'm making this conscious decision to change the way I'm processing this anxiety and processing this trauma in order to serve my highest good. I know I have the power to connect with who I really am and not how I've been conditioned to respond to things that are happening in my external reality. And then the next one is your heart center. And that is a green ball of light kind of in the center of your chest. And I imagine it spinning just beautifully. And I say to myself, I believe that I am here for a reason. The heart chakra is all about your belief in a higher power, your belief in your path here, your belief that there's more to life, and the unconditional love that you can feel when you connect to that belief system. And it's not necessarily about attachment or love in this lifetime with other humans, but it's about your love for this experience, for a higher power, and the love that you feel back from that. So I recognize that by doing this work and by disengaging from my mind, I connect to this unconditional love and light that can help me through this process. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to be here and do this. So then I would go up into my throat chakra, which is a beautiful ball of blue light right outside your throat. And it's really interesting because you guys hear me speak all the time, but after this past relationship, I was mute. I did not speak because speaking was scary because I didn't know the reaction that I was going to get from the other person. And so in these moments of anxiety, my mind went blank and I was mute. And so it was really important for me to focus some beautiful white light into this blue ball of energy that exists outside my throat and just imagine it opening and allowing myself to speak, saying, I'm safe to speak. I speak my truth. I have the power to speak my truth. I am safe in speaking my truth. And I listen with unconditional love to those around me. And I don't let words affect me. And this was a huge one for me as well. I was so triggered by what was being said to me and about me that I would react horribly. And this has been through my whole life. And so I really had to heal my inner child a lot in that sense. And in this circumstance, it was just amplified. So, and especially with the yelling, and that's how I'm taking in stimuli in this situation as well, I really had to calm my throat chakra and balance it and understand that words are words. And even if someone is attacking me, that is their own experience. I am my own being and I choose to take in that energy or not. And I don't have to. And just because I hear something does not mean I have to react to it. I am my own being of light, and that is all that I need in this lifetime. And so from there, I would go into my third eye, which is right outside your forehead. And this is a purple ball of beautiful light. And this whole time I'm envisioning this waterfall of white light kind of moving through my energy system, through the bubble of energy around me and through these chakras and balancing them as well. But this beautiful ball of purple light in the middle of my forehead is my third eye. And this is your visual communication center. So when I'm triggered in this sense, I would say, okay, I really appreciate my intuition. I trust my intuition more than ever. I know that if my intuition tells me to get out of a situation, I will follow it. I welcome visual communication from the divine through my dreams and through daydreams and through anything that wants to be given to me. I welcome it. I meditate to look for that communication, and I trust that my intuition will lead me to my highest good, and setting the intention to follow those gut feelings. So setting the intention to trust that gut feeling, or at least notice it and follow the visual communication that I was getting. And then moving up to the crown chakra, it's a white light above the top of your head, and really imagining that opening up and allowing all of the divine communication to lead me to my highest good, trusting that with my third eye open and I'm listening for divine communication and I'm trusting all of these chakras to work, that we've balanced below this, the crown opens up and just allows me to be led to my highest good. And I would just imagine this light coming through the crown and just guiding me into a space where I felt safe and where I felt like I was calm and grounded and centered. And so I would go through this when I was triggered, and it seems like it takes a long time, but when you're triggered enough and you do it enough, it takes not that much time at all. And then I would imagine the light around me. So if I imagine my soul as this energetic frequency that's emitting a frequency out through my body, I just imagine that frequency kind of forming a bubble around me. And that bubble can really kind of fill up with dense stuff that's coming in through those holes and wounds that you have. And so I would imagine this light coming through and just melting those away almost, and just melting the particles of yuckiness away from me. And even like I imagine a vacuum almost sucking them into the light away from me, and being a clear channel and a clear vessel, and knowing that I have the power to do that as well, and trusting that I have the power to do that. And then lastly, I would just imagine roots growing in from the bottom of my feet into the center of the earth, grounding me into this lifetime, reminding myself that I am here for a reason. I am on this earth for a reason. And when I ground myself into this reality, I recognize that I have the power, no matter what happens in this human life, to heal from it and to move into a better path and a better life. And that was kind of my process. And so the last thing that kind of comes into play here is the ego. And that is active throughout that triggering process, right? And it's the narrative that starts. And the ego really, I think, then takes our simple experience of hearing the yelling and having that reaction to then reminding us of every single time that we have experienced that kind of trigger, and giving us flashbacks of all of the other times that we felt that unsafe feeling, and telling us that we can't heal from it, and that this is who we are, and that, we're just not able to live healthy, happy lives after we've been through this kind of experience, and telling us even that we need to stay with a person, or that we aren't worthy of anything else, or things like that. So there's just the constant loop, the constant narrative, the spiraling of the mind that just says all of the unworthy things that really just takes us deeper into the rabbit hole of despair. And that is kind of the last part, where dismantling the ego is really, really, really important in the healing process and finding our power and our light. Dismantling the ego means every single time that a thought comes up, whether you think it's your true soul or whether you think it's part of your conditioning process, you have to examine it, especially when it's associated with an emotion. And recognizing that when those narratives and those thoughts come up, that they're not representative of your soul, they are representative of the conditioning process. I started to think of my thoughts as almost like a third-party entity that is coming in and giving me bad advice. And so every thought that I had that was associated with a feeling that was very human, anything that was a negative vibration, I would examine under a microscope. Why am I thinking that? Is that a product of my soul's true expression, or is that a product of all of the things that I've been taught to believe about myself that aren't true? And when something would come up that wasn't a true expression of my soul, which was often, if I couldn't get over it just by recognizing it, I would journal about it. And I would say, why do I still have this thought process? Why do I still think of this in myself? And when we allow our bodies then to react as we write about it, we're going to really trigger ourselves. And that chakra balancing process is really important during that. But being able to just write about it really does help us kind of work through how we don't need to think that way anymore. And anything that is led from a place of needing control or a place of needing power is not in our highest good, and it is not reflective of our soul's true expression. And letting go of the need for control, letting go of the need of power, and that comes back into the heart space where we have to trust and believe that things are going to work out for us. And we don't need to push people into places that we feel are right. We don't need to control certain situations in order to protect ourselves. We just have to let go. And when we let go, there are going to be difficult things that happen. But if we have a way to balance ourselves through those difficult things, and we're recognizing that things are happening for a reason and that we're well equipped to handle those things, we are able to navigate this life and the difficult things that happen in such a healthier way, in such a happier way. And there's never going to be a day where you don't have something that happens that kind of makes you think twice about life or feel not so good. But it doesn't have to consume your body. It doesn't have to consume every part of your day. And it doesn't have to shift the way that you're experiencing life. Life can still be good, and you can experience it in a beautiful way filled with gratitude no matter what is happening. And it's a process of just coming into that higher vibrational space within yourself in order to attract higher vibrational experiences. So finding our power and light really happens when we start to break down all of the human conditioning layers of our experiences within our life and how our body is processing all of those conditioning, and really start to feel who we are. So then as you start to do that, and as you start to recognize all of the things that were kind of wrong, there's also an important aspect of this of finding all the things that are right, finding the things that you love about yourself. And while I was doing all that deep inner work, I would also write what I was grateful for and write what I wanted myself to be like. At that point, I was so disconnected from who I was. When I wrote about the person that I wanted to be, I felt like it was like an alien. I felt like I would never be that person, but I just did it. It felt right to do it, and I just did it. And I wrote this narrative, which I've sent to a lot of you that do coaching with me. I wrote this narrative that's just telling myself, like, this is who you really are. And even though I didn't feel like that's who I really was at the time, I knew there were elements of it that were true. And I wanted to be that person. Even though it was outside of myself, I wanted to be that person. And lo and behold, that is who I really am. And I think it's important to note that a lot of times when we're kind of trying to understand who we are, the person that we want to be is going to feel like it's not us. And that's because we are so disconnected from our light. But if we have the sense that we want to be something, first of all, we can be that. And second of all, you probably are that. Our souls are infinite and expansive, and we are beings of duality. We are light and dark, and especially in this human experience, we have the dark side of being human. We have the light side of being a being of unconditional love and light in our soul's vibration. And so we have to truly just pretend that we're the light, and then it turns out that we are the light. But we need to put ourselves there before we recognize that we are. And through doing so, you just start to embody those qualities. And then the true formation of how your soul is reflected in that space that you kind of set the intention to be in just shines, and it becomes very natural. And you feel as though you have always been this way. That's how I feel. It's like, how was I not this way? And how did I not see this in myself? And the truth of the matter is that was the whole point. And that's why when I got a lot of messages that were like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I am so grateful that this all happened in exactly the way that it did, because at this moment in time, I am at peace and I know myself more than ever. I'm so happy to have had the opportunity to go deep into the pain to find the light and be able to express it to all of you and hopefully help people along the way. I also love waking up in the morning, which was never a thing in my whole entire life. And I love my life. I truly just love my life. And I'm so excited to be doing what I love, and not even doing what I love, just have a day where I have a calm nervous system. When I was starting my healing process, the one thing that I would hope for is to just have a day that I didn't have anxiety, have a day that I didn't feel depressed, have a day where I wasn't triggered, have a day that I had a calm nervous system. And I honestly, guys, never thought that I would get to that point. And now being at that point, I am just the most grateful for every single situation that has led me to be able to be this person now. And that is what life is all about. All we have is the present moment. This is all we have. We cannot go back in time. And the acceptance of not being able to go back in time is probably number one here. Number two would be going into the wounds and the trauma and healing them. And number three is dismantling the narrative and the ego. And four is coming into a place of gratitude, not only for this human experience, but specific things about yourself, specific things about your life, and the way that you feel like you truly emanate your soul's frequency, and trusting and believing that there is something beyond us that is guiding us and leading us to our highest good. So from all of that, I also want to give just a couple more tips and tricks, I guess, to come into awareness of who you really are. When we talk about soul purpose, a lot of people will reach out to me as a psychic medium and spiritual coach to be like, can you tell me my soul purpose? And I can give insight into your inherent qualities that are meant to be expressed in this lifetime. And to me, that is your soul purpose. And there isn't like a checklist of things that we have to get done here. Even with the work I'm doing, there's not a certain amount of people that I'm supposed to reach. There's not a certain amount of past loved ones that I'm supposed to connect to their human loved ones. I'm here to grow and evolve and just come more and more into my expression of my soul. So for me, it means communicating this kind of stuff to you all. For a singer, it means, really stepping into their expression of their voice and the art of their soul. And, it's different for everyone, but it's not something outside of ourselves that we have to do. The work is done inside. I do feel that every soul that is on this planet has come to work on themselves. And when we work on ourselves, we inherently share that light with others. And that is the beautiful part of being here, that when you decide to do the work on yourself, not only does it help you have better days and a better life, but it helps everyone that's in your path have better days and better lives. And it also attracts higher vibrational friendships and relationships into your life. And so I don't feel that the soul's purpose is something to share with others. I do feel like it's just coming home to ourselves. And in doing that, beyond the kind of hard work that we do with inner child healing and shadow work and the ego and all of the things that we talked about today, there's also little things that we can do in our day-to-day that help us too. And that's just getting out of our routine. Our minds are on autopilot 95% of the times. I have to do this in the morning. I have to get coffee. I have to make breakfast. I have to switch laundry, and then I have to da-da-da-da-da-da. And then I have to go to work, and then I'm going to feel tired, but I still have to do this, this, and this. And we drive the same way to work. We go to the same grocery store. We have the same meals, every week. And it's like anything that we can do to break ourselves out of the autopilot actually allow us to be inspired by who we really are and allow us to kind of feel who we really are and what our soul's vibration really is. Think about yourself as a child just exploring somewhere new. That sense of bewilderment and interest in everything around really brings us back into who we are and how we're experiencing life. And so when we're on autopilot and just going through our days in this very repetitive, dense way, we're just not able to feel ourselves. We're just very disconnected from ourselves. So I encourage you to kind of do things that are different for you, even if it's trying like a new type of food, and just experiencing those sensations. New things will allow you to kind of reconnect with yourself and go like driving different ways, seeing different scenery, watching a different kind of movie, or reading a different kind of book. All of those things can help us just kind of get out of our mind and into the experience, into the sensations of the experience, as well as the sensations of your own vibration. And another thing that you can do is be expressive. When we can be creative and expressive, it really allows our soul to express itself. It just makes sense, right? And so maybe there's something you like to do as a kid. Maybe it's painting or singing or dancing. You don't have to do it in front of anyone, but just be extra expressive and really try hard to feel that feeling of you as a kid just having fun. I think that also in our society, there's this certain expectation for adults to have matured in certain ways and be certain people and not connect in that way. And it's like, what is the point of life if we're not going to have a little fun? If you're in this pattern of working 9 to 5 and then going out, to dinner on the weekend, and that's kind of the fun in the routine, I just encourage you to do something different, do something creative. Try a new hobby. I actually got into golf a couple of years ago. That's one of the things that sparked my spiritual and healing growth. I remember starting to play golf, just trying something new. I just felt so empowered, and I didn't have to be good at it. It was just felt empowered to do something and anything like that. And then that kind of led me, you guys hear me talking about wanting to surf, or I've been wanting to get into yoga more and stuff. And just doing things that kind of are not in your typical routine that allow you to be expressive or allow you to feel in your power of trying new things and getting outside of your comfort zone is so important to start to feel your own energetic, true vibration. So anything that's a little bit different and fun, I just encourage you all to do while also working on your healing and energetic balancing work. And I hope that you found this episode useful today, and I wish you all the best in your spiritual and healing journeys, and I will see you in the next episode.